Hey guys, Chris here, and I'm Ukrainian Canadian. Today's January 15th, 2023, and let's get to the news happening in Ukraine, shall we? So, first news, it's not positive. Yesterday, the Russians did a massive missile attack over Ukraine again, and unfortunately, the biggest casualties are from the city of Dnipro. And unfortunately, the Russians did hit a civilian apartment building, and currently it's still being calculated in terms of the toll, death toll. But right now it rose to 23. Yesterday it was only 5, but unfortunately, it is going to be higher, I believe. They literally destroyed an entire apartment complex where 1,700 people lived in, which pretty much leveled half of the building. And currently, there is about 72 people that are wounded, 43 that were reported still missing, and 39 were rescued so far. But unfortunately, I think that the death toll is going to be rising. It proves yet again that the Russian government, the Russian state, is a terrorist state. And they're not even hiding the fact anymore that they're okay with doing that. They're promoting the fact that they're hitting civilian targets, and nobody really is doing anything in Russia. It's funny, or I guess it's sad, because I just made a post on YouTube Friday evening, and kind of just indicating that I don't believe that we need to just be pointing fingers at the entire Russian society for all this. There's still a lot of Russian people, whether it be in Russia or outside of Russia, that are doing their best to prevent this war. But unfortunately, they're a minority, and I still believe that there can be prosperous and free Russia following this war. But you know only after I said that this happens, and it's really, they make it hard, that the Russian people make it really hard to have any empathy for them. And I know, again, I want to acknowledge the fact that there's a lot of good Russian people out there, but they're such a minority. It's really hard to really support the entire Russian society as a whole. Moving on from that, you can see that according to the Ukrainian sources, the KH-22 missile was used. Primarily, that was the missile that was used to strike, and this is a missile from the 1960s. So Russia's really going back, and it proves yet again that their stockpiles of weapons, especially the missiles and shells, is really dwindling. You can see as well that they only fired 33 cruise missiles. A couple months ago, it used to be close to 100, and I think it slowly starts going down. And also how often they do it, right? It was 2 weeks ago that they did this, so you can see that I think that by springtime, we won't be seeing as many of these attacks anymore, and probably the stockpiles of missiles is going to be very, very, very low. How many Russia has, it's, nobody really knows exactly, but it's definitely going down. And you can see here that the fact that they're using old tech from the 1960s, the amount of missiles they're firing as well, 33, and the irregularity, proves yet again that Russia is really in a desperate position in terms of its stockpiles. They cannot replenish it, obviously, due to the sanctions. And if they can, it's really, you can count on your fingers how many they can build per month. All that to say is that, unfortunately, Russia is still going to continue doing this until probably spring and summer. We should see a definite slowdown in terms of strikes. Now, the positive news is that, obviously, I've mentioned in my previous videos, is that Britain is going to be sending Challenger 2 tanks. Now it's confirmed that's going to be 14. Is it a high number? No. Is it going to impact the war? No, but it can have a meaningful impact on the front, where it be in Svatove, Kremina, Bakhmut, or by Donetsk City. I think that these Challenger 2 tanks are going to be very, very good on a specific front, but it's not enough to really affect the course of the war. What I think is going to affect the course of the war is that there is another announcement that the British Army is also going to be sending AS-90s artillery systems to Ukraine. But now it's 30 of them. Artillery is a game changer, or I wouldn't say it's a game changer, but they're so necessary for the Ukrainian forces. To this day, Russia still has an overwhelming advantage in artillery. They have thousands of thousands of thousands of them. They still have hundreds of thousands, if not millions of shells and rounds that they can use. So for Ukraine, even 30, I think is going to be very important to get these. And as you can see, the AS-90s have a range of about 25 to 30 kilometers, so they can definitely be used directly on the Bakhmut front. I think this is where they're most necessary because this is where the Russians have concentrated all their efforts in right now. So I think that these are going to be great for Bakhmut. So we'll see how quickly they can be sent out. Again, it's probably a matter of weeks. So probably by spring, we're going to start seeing them, like end of March, perhaps beginning end of March, hopefully. But thank you to Britain. These are going to be definitely useful. Last thing, and this is my personal opinion, so let me know what you guys think about it. But I wholeheartedly agree with this. I've heard this from a Ukrainian soldier, and I think that this is really necessary. Ukraine needs to start hitting Russian barracks, military headquarters, and targets located within Russia and Belarus, close to the borders. As you can see here, this map indicates this was from February of last year, where the Russian concentration, military concentrations were prior to their invasion of Ukraine. You can see that most of them were really close to the border within Belarus and Russia, in Belgorod and Rostov Oblast, and in the Belarus border with Ukraine. And so far, yes, the Ukrainians have been hitting air bases mostly and a few, oil depots, but it hasn't been enough in my opinion. And I think they mostly do it and they kind of keep a secrecy about it that we don't know who did it most of the times. But I think that it needs to be a very clear position now. We're almost a year in, and I think that Ukraine has the complete right at this point to be hitting Russian military targets within Russia, close to the border, and preemptive strikes against the mobilized soldiers. There is more reports coming in the next few weeks, and I've obviously I 100% agree with this, is that Russia's going to do another second wave of mobilization, a massive one. I truly believe that Russia's never stopped their mobilization since September. It's been ongoing, right? But it's not been at the scale that is going to be the next few weeks when officially Putin will probably announce a massive scale mobilization of even more soldiers, right? But that's why Russia's been able to really put on the pressure in Bakhmut, is because they've been constantly mobilizing soldiers ever since September. However, what I want to say is that these strikes need to happen like the ones in Makivka. If you guys remember New Year's Eve, Ukraine hit the city of Makivka in Donetsk city right here, where there was about 500, 600 soldiers, and pretty much all of them died. And that was very significant because, this really hinders their ability to form and attack en masse, right, with like hundreds and hundreds of soldiers. And, this was great, but it would have been better if these soldiers, and I pretty much am confident that the Ukrainians have some of the best intel. They know where these Russian mobilized soldiers are currently stationed in Russia, right before they're being sent out into Ukraine. I think this is what needs to happen in Tagnarok, Rostov-on-Don, just really hitting with HIMARS systems or the new drones, as I mentioned in my slide. Considering the fact that Ukraine has mentioned that they've successfully tested their new drones, the ones that have 1,000-kilometer range with about 75 kilogram of payload, and they need to be sent out and hitting these targets, right? This concentration here, so it prevents these massive buildups and this transition of mobilized soldiers into Ukraine, because there's no doubt that the Russian forces are going to be doing some sort of massive attack either from the north or from the east, or perhaps even the south, right? Trying to push through Zaporizhia. And so there needs to be some preemptive strikes to prevent these major buildups. They're going to be ongoing or ongoing right now, ever since September. I think that there is no more. The West needs to stop being scared about the fact that this is an escalation. How much more can we escalate? The last escalation is nuclear strikes from Russia. That's the only last escalation, and Ukraine has no choice but to do that. If they don't do that, then Russia will start pouring in hundreds of thousands of more soldiers into Ukraine, making life very complicated for the Ukrainian people and devastating as well. Devastating in terms of this destruction. So yes, now a preemptive strike is necessary. That's my opinion. Let me know what you guys think about it. But it's only towards military targets. I'm not talking about civilians. Obviously, they need to be left out. But the other positive aspect of doing this, of hitting, military barracks, large concentrations of mobilized soldiers, is the fact that the Russian people will also start feeling this a lot more, right? When the strikes are going to start happening in Belgorod, in Rostov, in Saratov, and even in Belarus, the people are going to start questioning just the same outrage that was in Makivka, right? The people in Donetsk were like, how can this happen? And even in Russia, right, there was a massive outrage. And the outrage is going to be so high within Russia that, I think this could be the fuel that could be the catalyst for perhaps, we can hope, but perhaps a larger scale revolt against the Russian government, right? I think that's also the other aspect that we need to consider, which could be positive on the Ukrainian side, is to really start this fire that could really fuel a revolution within Russia against their state. So that's what I think. Let me know what you think about my opinion on this. Definitely looking forward to hear back. Last thing is I want to just show you guys a little video. And also on the map, honestly, nothing has really changed the last since yesterday. The Russians are still trying to take Soledar completely. The Ukrainians are holding on a small little parcel of territory that is still part of Soledar, which is the highway through Blahodatne and the railway station just outside of Soledar. So the Russians are really trying to take, do as much as possible to take everything here, but it's hard because they've lost so much already in Soledar. There's already reports that about what was it, 10,000 Wagner soldiers died between Soledar to Bakhmut in the last couple months, and about or 4,000 or 5,000 dead and 10,000 injured, which is a massive amount of losses. So they don't have as much strength, but either way, I wouldn't be surprised if the Ukrainian force in the next couple of weeks are probably going to move back towards Blahodatne, but we'll see. But apart from that, it's just positional movements and fighting. Nothing new ongoing, nothing massive, no massive movements. So I'll keep you guys updated if there's anything major going on in the next couple of days. Last video is Putin saying that everything is going according to plan. So let's see what he has to say. I cannot ask you about the special military operation that you mentioned. News from Soledar are coming through. How do you evaluate the trend? And Putin says, the trend is positive. Everything is developing within the framework of the Ministry of Defense and General Staff plan. No mention of Wagner. Very interesting. Ministry of Defense and General Staff. I hope that our troops will please us more with the results of their combat work. So I hope our minions will do more work for my ego, says Putin, so we can win more territory in Ukraine. So overall, Putin is trying to calm his population down, tries to say that everything is going according to plan. So there you go. So that's it, guys. If you enjoy my channel, please subscribe to it. Please like my video if you liked the video, and comment about my last slide about hitting Russian military targets within Russia, in Milorovo, in Belgorod, in Rostov, even further in in Saratov. I think this is really necessary to really, really avoid this massive scale invasion that is planned from the Russian side. Where will it be? Could it be from Belarus? Who knows? Could it be from eastern Ukraine, eastern in Donbass? Could be. So let me know, guys, and I will see you in the next video. Take care.